By the fourth Friday, nearly everyone on Quay had noticed Caleb Wren taking the wrong road. Not a little wrong. Not a man pausing at a corner because the weather had turned him around. Wrong in the way a whole waterfront could measure. His cottage sat north of Quay and Blythe Chandlery, beyond the sail loft and the tar shed, where the road climbed away from the harbor lamps. Miriam Vale's boarding house stood south, past the fish stalls and the cooper's yard, where the tide smell stayed in the curtains. A man who had walked the same dock road for 15 years did not forget which way his own door stood. Not 4 Fridays running, the first time there had been weather enough to excuse him. A hard November rain came sideways off the bay and put every lantern on the quay in a trembling circle. Wagons left deep black ruts beside the warehouse. Canvas snapped against the mast poles. The road south of the Chandlery had already turned slick before the last freightman signed his ticket. Caleb came out of the stockroom with his collar up and his hat low. "I'll go that way," he said. Miriam looked toward the south road, then toward the north. He was not going that way. Everything that belonged to Caleb Wren was uphill and north. His cottage, his woodpile, the narrow yard behind the sail loft, the little lamp he always left trimmed low in the window. South held nothing of his life. Except her rented room. She said nothing. So did he. They walked. He kept to her pace without announcing he was doing it. When the road dipped beside the fish stalls and the gutter had gone to moving water, he stepped into the worst of it first, testing the stones before she crossed. He did not touch her arm. He only made the dangerous part smaller. Miriam pulled her shawl closer. "Does this town ever build a road that wishes to behave?" Caleb looked at the shining rut in front of them. "Only when no one needs it." She glanced over to see whether he had meant to be funny. His face gave her no help at all, so she saved the smile for later where it would cost her less. Near the cooper's yard he stopped, not because the rain had eased. It had not. He turned and looked back toward the chandlery, where one square office window still showed a thin yellow light. Miriam watched him watch it, and in that single glance she understood something she had not been meant to see. Caleb Wren was the sort of man who could lock a door, cross half a town, and still hear the latch in his mind. A man who carried duty after duty had already been done. He turned back to the road. Neither of them spoke the last 100 yards. At the boarding house step he stopped under the leaking porch roof. Miriam turned with her hand on the latch. He looked past her shoulder at the road he would have to walk again, alone, in the rain, back toward the office window he had already checked twice. "Good night, Miss Vale." "Good night, Mr. Wren." She went inside, but she did not go upstairs. She stood in the narrow hall with her wet gloves in one hand, listening to his steps fade south to north. The wrong road. The long road. The road no careful man took by accident. And the next Friday, when the sky was clear and the road had no excuse left to offer him, Caleb Wren came south again. Miriam had been at the chandlery nearly a month by then. She had arrived after the last coastal schooner of the season with 1 carpet bag, 1 letter from Elias Kerr, and 38 cents she had not meant to count until night. But Elias Kerr was 6 weeks dead. Caleb read the letter standing in the office doorway. His face changed at the signature, but not enough for anyone else to claim it had. "The post should have reached you sooner," he said. "It did not. The position was Mr. Kerr's promise." It was, and Mr. Kerr is gone. Behind her a carter coughed something about women and ledgers low enough to pretend it had been weather. Miriam looked past Caleb at the desk behind him. Freight slips curled under the inkwell. Customs receipts sat unopened. A stack of invoices leaned so badly the whole thing seemed one sneeze from collapse. "Give me until noon," she said. Caleb did not move. Outside men waited with wagons, barrels, sailcloth, lamp oil, rope orders, bills no one had answered. Because the man who knew where everything belonged was in the churchyard, Miriam held his stare. "Until noon," she said again. Caleb stepped aside. By 11:30, she had found the thing the mess was hiding. A coastal freight claim for $82.04, marked unpaid by the shipping office, already settled by Elias Kerr's own hand before his final fever. The receipt had been tucked into the wrong ledger under a stack of twine orders. Miriam copied the reference, pinned the proof to the claim, and set it on the middle of the desk. Caleb read it once, then again. He remained standing until he said flatly, "This was paid." "Yes." He sat down slowly, as if the chair had found him instead of the other way around. By closing, everyone on Quay knew the new woman in the office had kept $82 from leaving the chandlery for the second time. By supper, they knew she was staying. That part, The town understood. What it did not yet understand was Friday. The second walk came under dry stars. No rain, no loose planks, no blown lamps, no reason for Caleb Wren, whose cottage sat north, to come to the office door with his coat already on and walk south beside a woman who had not asked him to. Miriam let him get as far as the fish stalls before she said, "You know your house is behind us." He looked over his shoulder toward the north road. "I have known it all week, and still you came this way." A pause passed between them. Caleb's eyes stayed on the road. That is becoming the difficulty. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, not safe enough to be one. Miriam looked away before her own face betrayed her. The talking came more easily after that, though neither of them admitted it. He told her Elias Kerr had hired him at 16 when his father's fishing boat went down, and pride would not let Caleb say aloud that the house had run out of bread. "He never made me ask," Caleb said. That was all. But it was not small. Miriam understood the shape of him better after that. A man who had once been spared the humiliation of asking had spent the rest of his life trying to spare others the same. So she gave him a little truth in return. A counting room in Portsmouth that had failed even though her books had been right. An aunt too ill to take her in. A brother somewhere west who had stopped answering letters 3 winters ago. Caleb nodded once. He did not question what she had not offered. That restraint, too, was a kind of kindness. At the boarding house step, the cold lifted between them. Neither moved. "You do not have to keep walking me," she said. "I know. That should have ended it." It did not. Her hand stayed away from the latch. "Then why do you?" Caleb considered the question the way he considered a wait ticket, as if the first answer ought to be the true one. "Because I do not like leaving the road between you and that door." Miriam looked at the door because looking at him would have been less safe. "That is a poor reason to walk twice as far in the cold. I have built a life on poorer ones. Good night, Mr. Wren." "Good night, Miss Vale." She went inside, and this time when she stood in the dark hall, she knew exactly why she had not gone up the stairs. She was 23 years old, young enough for happiness still to surprise her. But she had already learned that wanting something in public gave other people permission to watch you lose it. So she kept her hope quiet. Quiet enough that it could not be laughed at, quiet enough that it could not be pitied. Mrs. Pike found her after Sunday service with her gloves folded so perfectly they looked sharpened. "A man may walk south every Friday, Miss Vale," she said, "and still turn north alone when winter makes him choose." Miriam adjusted one glove finger. "He walks because the Quay is dark. No one has promised anything. No one needs to promise for people to start counting." Mrs. Pike's smile did not warm her face. Kindness has a way of putting on a suitor's coat when the woman receiving it is new to town. Miriam thanked her in the voice people use for advice they will not swallow. Then she stepped down from the church steps and found Caleb already on the road. His hat was in his hand, his jaw was set. He did not say what he had heard. He had heard enough. "The road is bright this morning," Miriam said. "It is. Then I expect you may safely go north." He looked at her hands as she pulled on her gloves, not her face. "Is that what you want?" Miriam let the question sit too long, then told the truth badly because she had no gentler way to hold it. "I want not to be the woman everyone watches until she is left standing." Something crossed Caleb's face. Not anger, worse than anger, recognition. He did not answer. He walked beside her anyway. Not as far as the boarding house this time, but long enough for the silence to become its own conversation. 2 Fridays later, in colder weather, he said what silence had failed to say. "I heard enough that day." Miriam kept her hand off the latch. "Enough for what?" "To know I have let people name a thing I had not named myself." The boarding house lamp burned behind the glass. "And what would you name it?" Caleb looked down at his hat, turning the brim once in his hands. "Not courtesy." She waited. He lifted his eyes. "Not only courtesy." It was not a proposal. It was not even a full confession. But it was more than protection. And Miriam felt it land somewhere deep where careful things become dangerous. "That is a measured answer. I am a measured man." I had noticed. This time his mouth nearly gave the smile away. Nearly. The next Friday, Miriam did not step inside when they reached the boarding house. She turned back toward the north road. "You always walk south." Caleb followed her gaze. Beyond the chandlery, beyond the dark sail loft, the road climbed toward his cottage. Everything he was responsible for waited that way. His work, his rooms, his lamp, his life. "Walk north once," she said. Caleb went still. "Why?" "Because I would like to see the road you keep leaving." He turned his hat once, then twice, a small habit. A large confession. "If I ever ask you anything honest," he said, "it will have to be on that road." Neither of them moved. Then Caleb held out his arm. Not far. Just enough for refusal to remain possible. Miriam took it, and together they turned north. They went only as far as the tar shed, no farther. From there the chandlery roof cut black against the sky, and beyond it the first window of Caleb's cottage showed no lamp. It was not far enough to be a promise, but it was far past nothing. Walking his direction felt different from being walked home. Lighter, and more frightening. At the tar shed, he stopped, as if an invisible line had been drawn there long before either of them had the courage to see it. Then he turned with her and brought her back south. No more was said, no more was needed. She had walked into the road that belonged to him, and he had brought her safely back. That was enough to carry for a while. At the boarding house door she said, "Good night, Mr. Wren." Her voice held. "Good night, Miss Vale." She went inside, and for the first time she smiled before she reached the stairs. The office desk had a brass corner plate that sat a hair too high. Miriam had said nothing of it. Every afternoon, after enough columns, it left a faint red crescent on the inside of her wrist. One Tuesday morning she reached for the ledger and braced for the familiar bite. It did not come. The brass had been filed smooth, the edge lay flat under her palm, polished down until it no longer caught skin or sleeve. Through the office wall, she could hear crates moving in the warehouse. Caleb had been there before first light. He had seen the mark, and he had fixed the thing that caused it without making her point to where it hurt, without asking for gratitude, without putting his name on the mercy. Miriam opened the ledger, then closed it again. For nearly half a minute she could not make herself right. Captain Harlan brought the next public test. He drove his wagon to the loading platform and declared, in front of half the quay, that Miriam had shorted his canvas order by 2 bolts. His voice grew larger with every man who turned to listen. Caleb came out of the rope room, read the dock ticket once and did not call for another count. "If Miss Vale wrote it, the count is right." Harlan looked at the paper, then at Caleb, then at the men watching him lose his certainty. Miriam kept her eyes on the inventory book until the Quay remembered its work. Later, when the last wagon had gone, she carried a cup of coffee from the office stove and set it on the outer sill, far enough from the dust, close enough to the warehouse door that it could only be meant for one man. Then she went back to her chair and did not look through the glass. 10 minutes later, Caleb's boots crossed the platform, stopped, the cup lifted from the sill. Miriam found she had forgotten how to add. The next morning he set a paper-wrapped parcel on the corner of her desk and kept one hand on it a moment too long. The tide held the baker late. Miriam untied the paper, 2 currant buns, still warm. The tide held the baker? Caleb looked toward the harbor as if the water might testify. Long enough. Does the baker know he was delayed? He may discover it after breakfast. Miriam broke 1 bun open and let the steam touch her face. All morning she watched Caleb through the office window. The economical way he moved. The way he lifted weight from another man's hands before the man had to admit it was too heavy. The way care passed through him like work, not performance. When he glanced up, she did not look away quickly enough. For one long moment they held each other through dirty glass. Then he turned back to the crates. The harbor kept moving, her pen did not. She found Elias Kerr's repair log in the lower cabinet on a Thursday. Early pages carried his clear hand. Later pages shook. The same decline Miriam had seen in the invoices. Same mind, less obedient hand. Every hinge, mast hook, pulley, lock plate, and rope rack Caleb had repaired since Elias fell ill had been written in that book, which meant every repair made Caleb open the drawer and meet the last year of the man who had once given him work without making him beg for it. Miriam did not touch the old pages longer than she had to. She copied the active notes onto clean sheets, rack by rack, hook by hook. Then she tied the old log shut and set the new copy on the desk where Caleb would find it without having to ask why. She had not done it for the chandlery. He found it after dinner. His step halted in the doorway. Long enough for her to know he understood. He said nothing then. At closing his step came back. "Thank you, Miss Vale." He said it toward the paper. Not because she was unworthy of being faced, because if he looked at her he might say too much. She nodded over her ledger, and trusted neither her voice nor her eyes. Clara Kerr was 15 and had begun coming to the office in the late afternoons. She stood in the doorway with the guarded stillness of a girl who had inherited a building before she had been allowed to inherit certainty. On paper, the chandlery was hers. In practice, adults spoke around her as if ownership could wait until grief became convenient. The first afternoon, Miriam turned the ledger so Clara could see the change in her father's handwriting. "Here," Miriam said, "the figures stay true even when the script begins to fight him." Clara touched the margin beside the autumn entries, not the words, just the blank edge of the page. He still knew what he was doing. Yes, Miriam said, his hand was failing him, his judgment was not. Clara kept her eyes down. If the chandlery fails, does that mean father failed? That was not a child's question. It was a question grief asks when it has learned arithmetic. Miriam set her pen down before she answered. "A place can fail because weather turns, because men take too long to pay, because the world asks for more strength than any one person has. That is not the same as your father failing." Clara's fingers tightened on the edge of the desk. "He kept this place steady as long as he could," Miriam said. "That is not failure. That is the last honest work any of us can do." Caleb had come to the doorway with a freight slip in hand. He saw Clara bent over the ledger, saw Miriam's hand near the girl's, but not over it. Leaving room. He put the slip back in his pocket and returned to the warehouse without asking his question, because he had just learned something about Miriam that no ledger could show him. Silas Rudd arrived 3 days later with a leather case, polished boots, and a voice made for making other people doubt their own names. He looked at Miriam, then at Clara in the corner chair, then toward the warehouse. "I will wait for Mr. Wren. This concerns legal authority." Miriam dipped her pen. "You may wait or speak. The ink does not mind either way." Rudd laid his papers out as if the desk were already his. The claim was old. The tone was older. He did not dispute the arithmetic, he said. He disputed whether a young female owner, a hired woman bookkeeper, and a warehouse man had authority to settle accounts in Elias Kerr's name. The platform outside went quiet. Caleb came in before Miriam had finished not answering. He read the first page, then stepped to Miriam's left, not in front of her, beside her, where every man watching from the warehouse could see exactly what he was doing. "Miss Vale speaks for these books because she knows what is in them," Caleb said. "Clara Kerr owns this house because her father left it to her. If you have a dispute, write the county clerk and spell your courage properly." Rudd asked to see the entry. Miriam opened the ledger, set her finger on the line, held it there while he read. For once, Silas Rudd found no advantage in his voice. "The documentation appears sufficient," he said, then packed his case and left. Afterward, Miriam put coffee on the stove. When it was ready, she carried a cup to the sill and returned to her desk. Caleb's boots crossed the platform, stopped, then came back to the office door. "I should have known it sooner." She looked up. "Known what?" "That your right to speak was not something I gave you." He went back to work. Miriam stared at the empty doorway longer than the day allowed. By the first week of December, the books were clean. The freight claim was closed. The winter rope orders were sorted. And Miriam walked to the post office to ask whether any shop in town needed accounting help after Christmas. Not because she wanted to leave, because wanting to stay had begun to feel like standing on thin ice and pretending not to hear it crack. Caleb had said not only courtesy. He had walked her north once. He had filed the brass edge smooth. He had stood beside her in front of Silas Rudd. But he had not asked her anything, and Mrs. Pike's warning had never fully gone quiet. A man may walk south every Friday and still turn north alone when winter makes him choose. Miriam would not become the woman the Quay watched all autumn, only to pity when snow made the roads honest. Hope was becoming too costly to keep on credit. Caleb heard about the post office on Thursday. For 2 days he found work that not need doing. He rechecked rope that had already been counted. He moved lamp oil from one shelf to another and back again. He repaired a hinge that had not complained. He did not come to the office door at closing, not Friday, not Saturday. Miriam told herself that was answer enough. On Sunday afternoon, Clara came without Mrs. Lennox and stood in the office doorway. Her eyes went to Miriam's carpet bag against the wall. "Mrs. Pike says you are asking for winter work. The accounts here are steady now." Clara looked at the ledgers. The old ones Miriam had rescued. The new ones she had built clean. "I thought you were staying until I could read them without pretending I was not afraid." The admission came out guarded, almost angry, as if Clara resented needing it to be true. Miriam asked her to sit. They worked through the harbor fees until Clara found the pattern herself. Then the girl went home, and Miriam stayed long after the lamp should have been put out. By dusk, Caleb understood the truth he had been dodging. He had called his silence restraint because it sounded noble. It was not restraint, it was fear dressed in a better coat. He came Sunday evening with the harbor nearly dark. Miriam looked up from the desk. He stood at the near corner, hat in hand, eyes on the carpet bag. All the careful things he had done sat behind him now. The walks, the buns, the brass plate, the coffee on the sill. Every one of them true, every one of them not enough. "Walk north with me," he said. "Now, for supper." Her hand stilled on the desk. Caleb swallowed once. "Mrs. Lennox knows I came. She knows where I am asking you to walk. I told her I would bring you back before the hall lamp is put out." Miriam looked at him for a long moment. "That asks plainly. That is what I meant to do." They left the office together, past the warehouse, past the sail loft, past the tar shed where they had once stopped because one more step had meant too much. This time Caleb did not stop, neither did she. His cottage stood behind the sail loft, small and narrow, with a blue glass lantern burning in the window. Smoke rose thin from the chimney. The yard held a chopping block, a stack of split pine, and a coil of rope hung neatly from a peg because Caleb Wren apparently could not leave even rope unaccounted for. "You lit the lamp," Miriam said from the step. "I wanted you to know the door. I knew the road. I know." She looked at him in the cold lamplight. "You keep saying that. I keep meaning it." Inside, the room was warm, but supper had not quite become supper. A pot of chowder sat unheated beside the stove. A loaf waited in its cloth. One plate sat on the table. Another leaned in the dry sink with a chip at the rim. Miriam looked from the stove to Caleb. "You invited a woman to supper before deciding whether supper existed. I had the chowder. A brave beginning. I lost ground after that." The smile came then, small, unavoidable. She set down her gloves. "Where are the cups?" Supper became not something he had prepared, but something they made between them. Caleb set the pot on the stove. Miriam found the chipped plate. He cut bread badly. She corrected the knife without asking permission. They spoke of ordinary things while the chowder warmed. Clara's figures, a shipment of lamp oil, whether the first deep freeze would close the north road. But the room changed the sound of every ordinary thing. They were not at the office, not on the platform, not under a boarding house porch. They were in Caleb's small warm kitchen with 2 plates, one chipped, and the blue lantern making a narrow pool of light on the wall. When supper was done, Miriam rose and gathered the cups. Caleb did not stop her. For one quiet minute, the cottage held the outline of a life neither had dared to name. Miriam set the last cup down. "I do not mind walking north." Her voice was steady, plain as a correct figure. Caleb turned from the stove. "I thought silence was the careful thing." He faced her fully now. "It was not careful with you. The chandlery can stand without you if it must," he said. "Clara will learn. The books are clean. No one can claim I am asking because the work needs you." Miriam did not move. "I am the one asking." Caleb set his hat on the table, done hiding his hands in it. "You do not have to stay to be useful. You do not have to stay because Elias Kerr wrote you a promise. You do not have to stay because you have nowhere kinder to go." He stepped closer. "Not too close, enough. Marry me, Miriam, because I would like this road to be yours as much as mine." The room seemed to hold its breath. Miriam looked at the blue lantern, the chipped plate, the rope hung by the door. The man who had walked the wrong road until he finally found the courage to name it. "I came because Mr. Kerr made me a promise," she said. "I stayed because the work was honest." Her eyes returned to Caleb. "But somewhere between Clara's ledgers, that coffee on the sill, and the night I walked north with you, I stopped asking where I would go next." Caleb waited. This time she did not make him. "Yes," she said, "I will marry you." He crossed the small room. Only then she put her hand in his. He held it as carefully as if he had been carrying it in secret for weeks and was finally allowed to be glad. Later he walked her south one last time as Miss Vale. At the boarding house latch, neither of them had to wonder what the road meant. They married on a Thursday in December, under a white sky that made the harbor look made of pewter. Mrs. Lennox brought Clara, who kept her father's account pencil in her coat pocket through the whole ceremony. Near the end, Clara looked at Miriam. Not like a child begging to be kept. Not like an owner pretending not to be frightened. But like someone who had begun to understand that a place can survive grief without pretending grief was small. At the church steps, Caleb offered Miriam his arm. She took it. Mrs. Pike stood near the gate with her gloves folded, the same gloves that had once held a warning about winter and men who turn away. She said nothing. She did not need to. The whole Quay could see which road Caleb and Miriam chose. They walked north, past the chandlery, past the sail loft, past the tar shed where once they had stopped because going farther would have said too much. This time they did not stop. 12 years later, Quay Chandlery opened before the sun cleared the harbor. Clara Quay was 27 and kept the books in her own hand. Had for 5 seasons. She stood at the platform with the wait list open, telling a freightman his order was short without looking to see whether any man would back her. They always did. Mrs. Lennox still came some mornings with a basket and took the chair near the office stove. No one had ever suggested she give it up. Miriam came when Clara asked, and sometimes when she did not, because 2 children at home did not change the fact that this place had become part of the map of her own life. That morning she stood at the office window, coat still on, watching the Quay wake. The lamps were being pinched out one by one. Rope moved, canvas lifted. The harbor breathed against the pilings. Caleb crossed the platform with 2 cups. He set one on the outside sill, in the old place where she used to leave his. Then he came through the door and stood beside her. For a moment he looked out at the work, the ledgers, the wagons, the girl who had become a woman with ink on her hand and no apology in her voice. Then Caleb looked at Miriam, and the old checking in his face stopped. He was not measuring the road behind him. He was not listening for a latch left undone. He simply looked. Miriam took the cup from his hand. Their fingers stayed together a moment longer than the cup required. Some evenings, when the weather allowed, they still walked north after closing, past the chandlery, past the sail loft, past the tar shed that had once been a boundary and was now only a landmark. Sometimes one of them smiled at it, sometimes neither did. The road no longer had to prove anything. What had once looked like the wrong road had become the only road either of them meant to take.